Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. For years, the Bush administration has come under heavy criticism from human rights groups, legal scholars, members of Congress for its detention policies and support for torture and the so-called war on terror. But last week, President Bush got a rebuke from an unexpected source. Last Monday, the president was meeting with this year's presidential scholars. They're high school students. One of them handed him a letter signed by 50 of the students. It read, quote, "As members of the Presidential Scholars Class of 2007, we've been told we represent the best and brightest of our nation. Therefore, we believe we have responsibility to voice our convictions. We do not want America to represent torture. We urge you to do all in your power to stop violations of the human rights of detainees, to cease illegal renditions, and to apply the Geneva Convention to all detainees, including those designated enemy combatants." That's what the letter said. The White House said President Bush had not expected the letter, but read it, then told the students the United States is not torture and that the country values human rights. The seniors had been invited to the East Room as members of the Presidential Scholars Program, one of the nation's highest honors for graduating high school students. Two of the presidential scholars who signed the letter to President Bush join us today in our Firehouse studio. Leah Libresco is a graduate of the Wheatley School in Mineola, New York, and Mari Oye graduated from Wellesley High School in Massachusetts. She personally handed Bush the letter last week. Welcome both to Democracy Now! Explain the scene, Mari.
Well, it actually took place outside on the White House lawn. We were facing the Thomas Jefferson Memorial, so that seemed like a good omen in some way. And we're all lined up. It was 95 degrees outside. The president walked in and gave us a short speech saying that as we went on into our careers, it was important to treat others as we would like to be treated. And he told us that we would have to make choices we'd be able to live with for the rest of our lives. I had the letter in my hand and Leah had another copy. And so I said to the president, several of us made a choice and we would like you to have this, and handed him the letter. He put it in his pocket and said, "I'll have it," and they took the photo. After that, he took it out and said, "Should I read it now or should I wait?" And I said, "It's up to you, Mr. President." And he did read the letter to himself right there, and then we were able to talk about it very briefly.
And what did he say? How did he respond?
He read down the letter. He got to the part about torture. He looked up and he said, "America doesn't torture people." And I said, if you look specifically at the points we made, because we were careful to outline specific things that are wrong with the administration's policy. He said, so I said, if you look specifically at what we said, we ask you to cease illegal renditions. And then I said, please remove your signing statement to the McCain Anti-Torture bill. And then I said that for me personally, the issue of detainee rights also had a lot of importance because my grandparents had been interned during World War II for being Japanese American. At that point, he just said America doesn't torture people again. And another kid actually from Montana came forward and said, please make the U.S. a leader in human rights. And that happened in the space of about a minute, but it was a very interesting minute with the President of the United States.
Leah, you had the other letter in case Mari wasn't able to do what she did. How did you plan this?
Well, what happened was, I know I came down thinking if I'm going to be in the room with the president, I've got to say something because silence betokens consent, and there's a lot going on I don't want to consent to. But what was really remarkable is that when I came down for the program, I met people like Mari. Everyone a lot of the people wanted to say something to the president. People just kept saying, yes, we have to do something, we're here. So when we started talking about the issues we wanted to address, the issue that really came out was torture because it's not a partisan issue, the issue of human rights, that we thought it was something everyone could get behind. And in a way, it's really a microcosm of some of the problems there have been in this administration because we see here the secrecy that's been going on with the way they've been hiding secret CIA prisons, the renditions to other countries, and also the disregard for the humanity of people we call our enemies that sort of has been the guiding principle in everything that's been going wrong. So the more we talked about it, we wanted to write something, we wanted to say something. So we wrote a letter, and we finished it about 2 in the morning, the day before we met the president.
How many of you wrote it?
I think around 6 or so.
And how many are in the Presidential Scholars Program?
141.
Right, there were 136 people there, but our whole planning process took place over the course of 12 hours before we met the president, some of which we were asleep for. But I guess it was sort of something we thought about for a long time before we went down to Washington independently and privately. But, not even everyone there knew there was a letter. We went around, we'd had it on the bus, we'd had it at breakfast that day, and we sort of approached people individually. And some people looked at it, and it said, they hadn't been planning on doing something, but they looked at it and they said, this is respectful, this is accurate, I can sign this, and they signed it. So I think it was important. The manner in which it was done was also important.
So more than a third of the students signed.
I was really blown away. I was thinking, you know, if we get a 10th or so, that's good. That sends a statement. Then I checked with Mari at lunch. I'm like, so how are we doing? She goes, well, we're 2 signatures shy of 50. I'm like, wow.
Mari, your mother also was a presidential scholar?
Yes, in 1968 when LBJ was president. And she felt at the time that she wanted to say something about the Vietnam War, but she had an English teacher back at the school she came from who she didn't want to offend. And the English teacher had stressed that it was important, you know, to stay quiet when you were in the presence of a president. And I've had teachers that have stressed the opposite throughout my high school career. And so I thought of them, and I thought of my mother, and I thought of what I would be comfortable with in 40 years. And I think we did the right thing while we were there.
What did your mother say?
Well, when she found out, she'd been touring Washington. Our parents weren't with us at the time we went to the White House, and she was actually in the Holocaust Museum in the last room when I called her to say that we'd given the letter. She didn't know there was a letter beforehand when I called her to tell her what had happened. And she said that she walked out into the bright sunlight with tears streaming down her face. But since a lot of people walk out of the Holocaust Museum that way, you know, no one noticed anything out of the ordinary.
Your grandfather was a poet in the detention camps?
Right. He was born in California, but he'd grown up in Japan, and he spent some of his time in camp writing senryu, a type of Japanese poetry. It was it's something to do, obviously, and it sort of brought him some solace when he was there.
Do you have any of his poems?
I do. They published a short book of them, and I sent some over, too. So.
Leah, just before you went on the air, you were telling me your name, Leah Anthony Libresco. Anthony for?
Anthony's for Susan B. Anthony. My parents are both historians and feminists, so I actually am named after the great women's rights leader, and I have my mom's last name instead of my dad's.
You head to China in a week?
Yes, I'm really excited. It was an opportunity for some of the presidential scholars, and I just can't wait. I mean, the world's shrinking every day with the internet, but it's so exciting to get to see things for myself and learn more.
And Mari, in October, we interviewed Sarah Chayes, the former NPR correspondent who covered the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, leaving journalism in 2002 to run an aid organization in Kandahar called Afghans for Civil Society. She now runs a collective called Argon that sells soap and handcrafted products made in Afghanistan that I know you're involved with now. This is Sarah Chayes, what she had to say about the collective.
It's a way of trying to combat opium growing. In other words, the best way to make it possible for people not to plant poppy is for them to be able to make money growing other things.
And your choice to do this?
It's about grassroots. It's about building democracy on whatever level you can, and a cooperative where there are good relations with producers, where there's a collective decision-making process, and where we can honor a lot of the traditional licit crops that Kandahar has been known for millennia, seems like a worthwhile thing to be involved in.
That's Sarah Chayes. Mari Oye, how are you involved?
For a lot of the time that project was getting going, all of the soap came through my basement. We had a group at my high school.
The soap came through your basement?
Oh yeah, the boxes would show up. They were shipped from Kandahar, and we would go down and pick them up, open them up, find this sort of jewel-like soap packed in odd Afghan newspapers with things written on them we couldn't read, and then work on the packaging. We did marketing. I think that sort of helped me coming into this because I had the experience working with other people and sort of getting everyone together even if we hadn't known each other ahead of time. And of course, it's also been amazing working with Sarah. I knew her family a little bit before the project started up, but I talked to her and I'd said, if there's anything that I can do to help this project, you tell me. And there turned out to be more I could do than I expected. So it was a wonderful thing to work on during high school.
Where do you head to college?
I'm going to Yale next year.
And
Yale.
Leah as well. And what are both your plans in college? What are you going to study?
Well, actually, one thing I'm really excited about specifically at Yale, I don't know what I'm going to major in, but Yale has the only microfinance program of all the colleges in the U.S., I believe. The same kind of ideas that Motivate the Grammy make, they're putting to work in New Haven. And it's something I'd sure like to get involved in.
And Mari?
I'm undecided officially, but I'm interested in English and international relations.
And what do you think this meeting with the president will mean for you in your life?
I don't know. I hope it means something to him. I don't know whether it will or not, but I hope he'll in some way think about what we said to him. For me, I don't think I've changed beforehand or afterward. but it's definitely something I will think back on and remember about as vividly as anything in my life so far.
I've got to say for me that the most remarkable moment wasn't meeting the president and handing over the letter. It was everything that had gone before that, the talking about it, the realizing that across the country there are all these people who are so invested in what's going on and really are committed to making a difference, and that once you give people data, they're likely to stand up and join you.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Leah Anthony Libresco and Mari Oye, both presidential scholars who gave the president a letter that said that the U.S. government should not be involved in torturing people. That does it for today's broadcast. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshire, John Hamilton.